I had always believed family was everything. But that belief shattered in a moment. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought I'd be standing here, telling this story. The night of the family dinner was supposed to be a celebration, a time for all of us to reconnect. It wasn't. I showed up, hoping to see my family gathered, sharing a meal, just like we had done every year. But when I arrived at the restaurant, I couldn't find my name on the list. I looked around, and there they were, my parents, sitting at a table near the window. They didn't even look up. They didn't even acknowledge my presence. It hit me hard, like a punch to the stomach. I stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. I had to be mistaken, right? They must have forgotten. Maybe it was a simple mix-up. But as I stood there, I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I wasn't invited. I took a deep breath and turned away. The weight of that moment sank into my chest. I couldn't stay there, not after that. But what was I supposed to do? Go home? I walked past the table, pretending I didn't see them. The silence was deafening. I made my way to an empty corner of the restaurant, found a table for one, and sat down. The waiter came over with a menu, and I ordered a drink. It didn't feel right, but it was all I could do. The loneliness hit me like a wave. It wasn't just about the dinner. It was about everything. The years of being pushed aside, the subtle distance growing between us. I didn't know how to explain it, but I knew something had changed. And tonight, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I barely ate. My mind kept racing, going over every moment, every memory. Why wasn't I invited? What had I done wrong? Was I not good enough for them anymore? The questions lingered, but no answers came. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any worse, a voice broke the silence. As I sat there, my drink growing warm in front of me, I tried to convince myself that this wasn't a big deal. Maybe they had forgotten. Maybe they were busy. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I could feel the weight of the silence settling in. I hadn't been included, and it hurt more than I was willing to admit. The feeling wasn't just about being excluded from a meal. It was about being forgotten, cast aside. I spent the next few minutes staring at my phone, waiting for a message or a call, but nothing came. No apology. No explanation. The minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. I could feel my heart sinking deeper. It wasn't just the dinner, it was everything. I thought about all the times my parents had made excuses for not spending time with me. The missed birthdays, the forgotten phone calls, the way they seemed so distant whenever I needed them the most. I had always brushed it off, telling myself it was just part of life. But tonight, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just upset. I was disappointed. I was hurt. And the worst part was, I didn't even know why. I had always tried to keep the peace, to hold the family together. But now I was realizing that maybe, just maybe, I had been the only one holding it together. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden voice. It came from the table beside me. Are you okay? I looked up to see a man, probably in his late 40s, sitting at the next table. His kind eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I felt seen. I smiled faintly, nodding, but my voice caught in my throat. I'm fine. Just having a quiet dinner. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. That doesn't look like a quiet dinner to me. I didn't know why I felt compelled to share, but for some reason I did. I told him about the family dinner, about the hurt, the loneliness, and the sudden realization that I didn't matter to them anymore. I wasn't looking for pity, but somehow, just talking about it made the weight feel a little lighter. He listened intently, nodding as if he understood. After a long silence, he said, "Sometimes family isn't everything. But you're still important. You matter." His words didn't erase the pain, but they made me feel less alone. It was strange. A stranger, someone I would never see again, offered me more empathy than my own family had in years. And for the first time that evening, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe I didn't need their approval. Maybe I could make my own way, find my own happiness. I hadn't expected the night to turn out like this. But here I was, sitting at a table with a stranger who had shown me more kindness than I had experienced in a long time. It was a small comfort, but it was enough to make me believe that things could get better, that I could get better. The next day, I couldn't shake the conversation with the stranger from my mind. His words kept replaying in my head, "You matter." It was strange how a simple phrase could carry so much weight. I had spent years chasing approval from my family, but that stranger had given me something they never had: kindness without expectations. I wasn't sure what to do with that feeling. Part of me wanted to call my parents, demand an explanation, but something inside me held me back. Instead, I spent the day walking around the city, letting the cool air clear my mind. I had been so focused on my family's rejection that I had neglected everything else. Maybe it was time to stop letting their actions dictate my happiness. By the time I returned home, the silence was deafening. The apartment was exactly how I left it, untouched, unchanged. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, but there was no sound of voices, no chatter, no warmth. It was just me. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space around me. I had spent so many years trying to fill that void with family, but now I was realizing that I couldn't rely on them for my happiness. I was the one who had to change. I thought about the times I had put everyone else first, the missed work events, the sacrificed weekends, the canceled plans, always to please them. But they hadn't done the same for me. They had let me slip through the cracks, and now I was left with nothing but the remnants of a relationship I had fought so hard to hold on to. It was painful to admit, but I knew what I had to do. I needed to start making decisions for myself. The first step was letting go of the idea that my family's approval meant anything more than my own happiness. I didn't need their permission to live my life. I didn't need them to validate me. I had spent so much of my life trying to be what they wanted, but what about what I wanted? What if I could finally make that choice? My mind raced as I sat there, the reality of my decision slowly sinking in. The weight of it was still there, but it felt lighter. It was a start. I picked up my phone, ready to make the call I had been avoiding. Not to my parents, not yet, but to someone else, someone who had always been there for me, even when my family wasn't. It was time to start building my own support system, one that didn't come with strings attached. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for me to start over, to create something that was truly mine. The phone call was harder than I expected. I had always thought that I could just push the doubts aside, but now that I was facing the truth, everything felt different. I had to face the reality of how far I had drifted from my family and how little they seemed to care. I dialed the number slowly, the weight of each ring amplifying my uncertainty. When my mother finally picked up, her voice was as warm as ever, but there was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. "Emily, is everything okay?" she asked, her tone casual, as if nothing had changed. "Mom, I need to talk to you," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I've been thinking a lot about last night. About the dinner." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost hear her shifting. "What about it?" she asked, almost too quickly. I could feel my heart race, but I kept going. "You didn't invite me. You didn't even think to check in. I don't understand. After everything, why wasn't I there?" There was another silence, but this time, it felt heavy. I could tell she was trying to find the right words, but there was nothing. No apology. No explanation. "Emily, we were just," she trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "It wasn't intentional." "Then why didn't anyone call me?" "Why? Didn't anyone even mention it?" I pressed. "You could have at least told me something." I could hear the faintest sigh on the other end of the line. "It's just that. We thought you were fine. You're always so independent. We didn't want to bother you." The words stung. They didn't want to bother me? I was a part of this family, wasn't I? "Mom, I'm your daughter. I'm not fine. I just wanted to be included, to feel like I mattered." I could feel my voice crack, but I held it together. I didn't even get a phone call. Not a single word from anyone. There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, more distant. "I'm sorry, Emily. We didn't mean to hurt you. We didn't think." Her words felt hollow, and as much as I wanted to believe them, I couldn't. I had spent too long trying to convince myself that everything was okay, that the distance was just a phase. But it wasn't. It was real. "I think I need some space," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this." She didn't respond right away. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. "Okay, Emily," she said finally, her voice sounding small. "Take all the time you need." The call ended, but the weight of it stayed with me. I put the phone down and stared at the wall, feeling more alone than I ever had before. I had finally confronted the truth, but I still didn't know how to move forward. The realization that my family wasn't who I thought they were was like a punch to the gut. I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to trust them the same way again. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog. My mind kept replaying the conversation with my mother, the words she said, the silence that followed. I knew I needed to process everything, but it was hard. I spent the next few days in my apartment, trying to find a way to make sense of it all. The emptiness in the air felt suffocating, and I couldn't help but wonder how things had gotten so distant. I kept thinking about my family the way they had once been, so close, so supportive. But now, all of that seemed like a distant memory. I thought about the times when I used to call my parents just to chat, or when we would all sit down for dinner and laugh together. Those moments now felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who no longer existed. As I sat there, lost in thought, I heard a knock on my door. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I was ready to face anyone. But when I opened the door, I was surprised to find someone standing there, someone I hadn't expected. It was my cousin, Jake. He had always been the one person in the family who understood me. We hadn't talked in a while, but there he was, standing at my door, with an apologetic look on his face. "Hey, Em," he said softly. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him in. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to hide the weight of everything that had been building up inside. "I heard about what happened with your parents," Jake said, his voice quiet. "And I wanted to check on you. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." His words were like a balm on a wound I hadn't even realized was still bleeding. I felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I just nodded and led him to the couch. We sat there for a while, neither of us saying anything. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just the quiet understanding that we both needed. After a few minutes, Jake finally spoke. "You don't deserve this, Em. You've always been there for them, and now they're treating you like this? It's not right." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I had needed to hear someone else say it, someone who wasn't part of the family. "I don't even know what to do anymore," I whispered. "I feel so lost." Jake looked at me, his expression serious. "You don't need them, Em. You have people who care about you. Maybe it's time to start putting yourself first." I couldn't remember the last time anyone had said something like that to me. I had always been the one who gave, who kept everything together for everyone else. But now, for the first time, someone was telling me it was okay to think about myself. It was a relief, but it also terrified me. What did that mean for my future? Could I really walk away from the family I had tried so hard to hold together? The thought lingered in my mind as Jake stayed for a while longer, talking with me and offering a support I hadn't realized I needed. That night, I went to bed with a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in days. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fit into a family that had never truly seen me. Maybe it was time to start building a life on my own terms. The days following my conversation with Jake were filled with uncertainty, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of a life outside of the roles I had been playing for so long. It wasn't easy, and the weight of everything that had happened still lingered in the back of my mind. I found myself questioning everything, the choices I had made, the sacrifices I had endured, and the people I had trusted. But Jake's words echoed in my head. Maybe it's time to start putting yourself first. It felt selfish, but at the same time, it felt like the only way to move forward. I spent hours reflecting on my relationship with my family. I realized how much I had been giving, always putting their needs above my own, trying to keep everyone happy. But in doing so, I had lost myself. I had allowed myself to fade into the background, becoming just a shadow of who I used to be. The realization was painful, but it also lit a fire inside me. I wasn't ready to completely cut ties with my family, but I knew I had to create some distance. I had to reclaim my life, even if it meant stepping away from the people I had always considered my support system. The next few weeks were difficult. I spent a lot of time alone, figuring out what I wanted for myself. It wasn't easy to break the cycle I had been trapped in for so long, but with each passing day, I felt more empowered. I started focusing on things I had neglected, my career, my friends, and most importantly, myself. I had always been afraid of being alone, but now I was starting to embrace it. I began to enjoy my own company, taking long walks in the park, reading books I had put off for years, and finding peace in the quiet moments. Slowly, I was starting to heal, but the journey wasn't without its challenges. One day, I received a call from my mother. My heart raced as I saw her name flash on the screen. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I answered. "Emily, we need to talk," she said, her voice soft. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever was coming. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I want to apologize. I know I've let you down." The words caught me off guard. My mother had never been one to admit fault, and hearing her say that made my chest tighten. "I'm sorry too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I need time, Mom. I need space to figure out who I am outside of this family." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I understand," she said quietly. "Take all the time you need." The call ended, and I sat there for a moment, absorbing what had just happened. It wasn't the resolution I had expected, but it was a step forward. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I wasn't sure how things with my family would turn out, but I knew that for the first time in my life, I was taking control of my own story. The weeks that followed were a blur, but something inside me had shifted. I spent my time rediscovering things I had neglected for so long, simple things like reading a book I had always meant to finish, walking through the park without a purpose, and sitting in the quiet without the constant pressure of being something I wasn't. My thoughts, once consumed by my family's expectations and disappointments, were now mine to control. But just when I thought I was starting to regain my balance, my phone rang again. It was from my mother. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked up, prepared for the worst, but hoping for something different. "Emily, I've been thinking," she said. Her voice sounded softer than before, but still unsure. "I've been thinking about how things have gone between us, and I don't want you to think I don't care about you." Her words, though gentle, still didn't erase the hurt I felt. "Mom, I appreciate that," I said quietly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But I need time. I need space to figure this out on my own." I could hear her sigh, but I also heard the faintest trace of understanding in her voice. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry for everything. I just want you to be happy." I didn't know what to say to that. She had always wanted me to be happy, but her version of happiness had never aligned with mine. "I'll figure things out, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "But I can't keep doing this. I need to learn to put myself first." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she might argue, but she didn't. "I understand," she finally said. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." The conversation ended, and as I sat there, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't a resolution, not yet, but it was progress. For the first time, my boundaries had been respected, and that was something I had never experienced before. I spent the next few days reflecting on my conversation with my mother. It wasn't perfect, and I didn't know what the future would hold, but I finally felt like I was starting to take control of my own life. I wasn't just floating through the motions anymore. I had made a choice to change, to stand up for myself, and that was all that mattered. It was a new beginning, one that would take time, but I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in charge of my own future. It had been a few weeks since the call with my mother, and the silence between us had become more comfortable. I had spent that time focusing on myself, exploring the things I had put on hold for so long. My mornings now started with walks in the neighborhood, the sun rising slowly over the trees, casting a peaceful glow over everything. I had forgotten what it felt like to take a breath without the weight of family expectations pressing down on me. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years, and it felt good to laugh again. But even as I filled my life with new connections, the old ones still lingered in the back of my mind. My family, the ones who were supposed to love me unconditionally, still hadn't reached out. There were days when the loneliness crept back in, reminding me of the void they had left behind. It wasn't easy to ignore the pang of longing, but I had learned to sit with it, to acknowledge it without letting it control me. I wasn't defined by their absence. I had to keep reminding myself that I was enough on my own. One evening, as I sat by the window, a familiar name appeared on my phone screen. It was my father. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I hesitated. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would he apologize? Would he try to explain the things that had hurt me so much? I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello," I said, my voice steady but guarded. "Emily," my father's voice came through, tentative, almost as if he wasn't sure how to begin. "I've been thinking about everything, and I want to apologize for how things have been between us." I sat there, still. His words were unexpected, but not unwelcome. I had always waited for this, for him to acknowledge the hurt, for him to see me. "I know I've let you down," he continued. "I should have done better. I'm sorry." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My heart ached hearing him admit the things I had needed to hear for so long. But even then, I wasn't sure I could forgive everything in that instant. "It's okay, Dad," I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. "But I need time to figure out how to move forward." "I understand," he replied softly. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." The call ended, and I sat there, a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. I wasn't sure what the future held with my family, but for the first time, I felt like I had the space to find my own way. The past was still there, but I was learning how to let go, piece by piece. I wasn't alone anymore. I had myself, and that was enough. The days after my father's call were quiet, almost too quiet. It wasn't that things were fixed or that the tension between us had dissolved. It was more like an unspoken truce, an agreement that we would move at our own pace. I still didn't know where I stood with my family, but I felt a shift inside myself, a change I hadn't expected to come so soon. I found myself thinking more about what I wanted, about the life I wanted to build outside the expectations of my past. The weight of family obligations no longer felt suffocating. I had started taking small steps, focusing on what made me happy, even if it was something as simple as taking a Saturday afternoon to explore the city or spending time with friends who actually listened. There were moments of doubt, moments when I thought about my parents and wondered if I should reach out again, but I stopped myself. I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly seeking their approval. I was living for myself. It felt liberating, but also strange, like I was walking in unfamiliar territory. One afternoon, I received a text from my mother. It was short, just a few words, "Can we talk?" My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and now, out of nowhere, she was reaching out. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of how to respond. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk to her, but the distance between us still felt fresh. I had learned to survive without her constant presence, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to dive back into that dynamic. After a few minutes, I decided to respond. "What do you want to talk about?" I typed, keeping it neutral. The reply came quickly. "I've been thinking a lot. I don't want to lose you." The words hit harder than I expected. I had spent so long trying to convince myself that I was better off without them, but hearing those words made the walls I'd built start to crack. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time. I couldn't just fall back into old patterns. I had to be careful not to lose myself again in the process of trying to rebuild something that might never be the same. That night, I thought long and hard about what I wanted out of this. I didn't need their approval anymore, but I did need peace with myself and with them if possible. Maybe we could start over. Maybe we couldn't. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them dictate my happiness anymore. The following week, I found myself sitting at a small cafe, my phone in my hand, staring at the text from my mother. It felt like the weight of everything was in that moment, the decision to move forward, to reopen a chapter one had closed so long ago. I had taken my time, thinking about it, weighing the possibility of what it would mean to reconnect with her and the rest of my family. I had no idea if we could rebuild what we once had. But I knew that I was no longer the same person who had left that family dinner weeks ago. I had changed. I had learned that I could survive without their approval, without their presence. And that was something I could never unlearn. Still, there was a part of me that wanted to try. To see if we could start over, to see if it was possible to find a new way to be a family, one where I could still be me. I took a deep breath and replied to her message, "Let's talk." The meeting was set for the following weekend. The moment I walked into the coffee shop, I saw her sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, just like the countless times before. But this time, there was a difference in her eyes, something softer, something that hadn't been there before. I sat down across from her, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, though. It was more like two people who had both been waiting for the right moment to speak. "I'm sorry, Emily," she said finally, her voice quieter than I expected. "I know I've hurt you. I know I haven't been the mother you needed, and I'm sorry for that." I listened to her words, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like she was really hearing me. There was no excuse, no deflection. Just an apology, simple and sincere. "I've been thinking about everything," she continued. "About how I treated you, about how I treated our family. I wasn't a good mother, and I'm sorry. I want to try to be better for you, for us." I didn't know what to say at first. There was a part of me that wanted to scream, to ask why it had taken so long for her to realize all of this. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and simply said, "I need time, Mom. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm willing to try. But I need to put myself first from now on." She nodded, her eyes softening. "I understand," she said. "Take all the time you need. I'm here whenever you're ready." We sat there for a while longer, talking about everything and nothing. The conversation wasn't perfect, but it was real. It wasn't the resolution I had expected, but it was enough. It was a step forward. A small one, but it was a start. The weeks after that conversation with my mother were filled with small, cautious steps. I wasn't sure if we were heading toward healing or simply avoiding the cracks that had formed between us. Every time I spoke to her or saw her, I felt the weight of those unresolved emotions still hanging in the air. But I couldn't ignore the changes I had made within myself. I had started to rediscover the things that made me happy. I was no longer bound by the expectations that I had carried for so long. I began to take more risks, small ones at first, like signing up for a painting class I had always been interested in or going for long hikes on weekends. It felt liberating, and the sense of independence I had been searching for was beginning to feel like a real part of me. One evening, as I sat in my favorite cafe, sipping on my coffee and reflecting on the past few months, I received a message from Jake. It had been a while since we had talked. I had been so wrapped up in my own journey that I hadn't had time to catch up with him. His message was simple. "Hey, how's everything going? I've been thinking about you." I smiled as I read it. Jake had always been a constant presence in my life, even when I didn't fully appreciate it. We had grown up together, and while our paths had diverged in many ways, he had always been there when I needed someone. I replied almost immediately, "Things are good. I've been busy finding myself, I guess." I paused before adding, "But I think I'm starting to get it." Jake responded quickly, "That's awesome, Em. I'm really proud of you." His words felt like a boost I hadn't realized I needed. I didn't expect him to fully understand the depth of what I was going through, but just hearing him say that made me feel seen. We made plans to meet up the next weekend. When I saw him, it felt like no time had passed at all. We talked about everything, my progress, my struggles, my family, my dreams, and it felt good to just let everything out. He listened, without judgment, without offering solutions, just listening. It was something I hadn't realized I had missed. When we said goodbye, Jake gave me a hug. "You're doing great, Em. Keep pushing forward. You deserve this," he said. His words stayed with me for the rest of the day. I had always thought I needed my family's approval to feel validated. But now, with Jake's words and the changes I had made, I realized I didn't need anyone's approval but my own. I was on my way to becoming the person I had always wanted to be, and for the first time, that was enough. As the weeks passed, I found myself adjusting to a new rhythm of life. The sense of freedom I had begun to feel was more than just the absence of family obligations. It was the presence of something I had never fully embraced, myself. I was no longer just the daughter, the one who kept the peace, the one who tried to fix everything. I was Emily, an individual with dreams, hopes, and the ability to shape my own future. I took pride in the little victories, waking up early to enjoy a quiet morning before work, trying new activities without guilt, and learning to say no when something didn't align with my needs. I started writing more, something I had once loved, but had let slip away. The words flowed easily, and for the first time, they felt like an extension of me, not something I had to do to please anyone else. But even as I reveled in this newfound independence, I knew that my relationship with my family wasn't something I could completely leave behind. There were moments when I missed the feeling of being part of something bigger, when I wished my family was there to celebrate the little victories with me. I had been doing this on my own for so long, and while I was proud of how far I had come, I couldn't help but wonder if things could ever go back to what they once were. Then, one afternoon, I received a message that caught me off guard. It was from my father. He was asking if we could meet. I stared at the text for what felt like an eternity. It had been so long since I had heard from him, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door again. But part of me knew that I couldn't keep avoiding the truth, that I was still connected to them, whether I liked it or not. I agreed to meet, and we decided on a quiet park near my apartment. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting on a bench, looking almost vulnerable. It was strange to see him like this. He had always been the strong one, the one who carried the weight of everything. But now, there was something different about him. He stood when he saw me and gave a hesitant smile. "I've missed you," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "I know things haven't been easy, but I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to be a better father." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to throw everything in his face, the hurt, the abandonment, all the years of disappointment. But instead, I just nodded. "I've missed you too," I said quietly. "But I need time. I can't just pick up where we left off." He nodded, understanding. "I'm not asking you to. I just want a chance to make things right." As we sat there, talking for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized something. This wasn't about going back to what we had. It was about moving forward, building something new. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Maybe there was a way for us to heal slowly over time. But it had to be on my terms, and I was finally ready to let that be enough.